The room was filled with excitement. Tails wagged, paws scratched against the floor, and hopeful eyes followed every person who walked past the kennels. One by one, dogs were chosen, leashes clipped on, doors opened to new beginnings. Yet in the corner, barely noticeable unless you were truly looking, one dog stayed completely still, watching everything happen without making a sound. People passed by again and again. Some smiled, some paused, some reached out to other dogs who jumped higher, barked louder, begged harder. This dog did none of that. It did not whine or press against the bars. It simply sat there, head slightly lowered, eyes soft but tired, as if it had already learned that hope could be dangerous when it comes too often and leaves just as fast. Time moved slowly in that shelter. With every adoption, the noise faded a little more, and the space grew quieter. The dog remained, surrounded by empty kennels that had once been full. Each closing gate echoed like a reminder of being left behind again. It was not that the dog did not want to be chosen. It was that it no longer knew how to ask. There was something about the way it watched others leave that felt heavier than sadness. It was resignation, a quiet acceptance that maybe it was invisible, maybe it was forgettable, maybe it simply did not matter enough. Stories like this happen every day, hidden behind cheerful adoption photos and happy endings that rarely show who is still waiting when the lights go off. And then, just when it seemed like this would be another day of silence and disappointment, something happened that no one expected. Something that would change the meaning of being ignored forever, and turn this quiet moment into a story that stays with you long after it ends. The days inside the shelter followed a predictable rhythm. Mornings brought hopeful visitors. Afternoons carried quiet conversations, and evenings settled into a soft stillness broken only by the sounds of restless dogs. From the same corner kennel, the dog watched it all unfold. It learned the patterns quickly, how footsteps slowed in front of excited faces, how laughter followed wagging tails, and how doors opened for everyone except itself. Volunteers noticed the dog's behavior long before visitors did. It never barked when someone approached. It never jumped or pressed its body against the gate. Instead, it sat calmly, almost politely, as if trying not to take up space. This was not calmness born from confidence, but from repetition. Rejection had taught the dog that standing out did not always lead to kindness. When families walked by, the dog's eyes followed them quietly. It memorized faces, studied tones of voice, and listened to conversations filled with words like friendly, playful, and perfect fit. The dog seemed to understand what those words meant, even if they were never directed at it. Each time someone chose another kennel, something inside the dog dimmed, just a little. At night, when the shelter lights softened and the noise faded, the dog lay curled tightly against the back wall. This was when its guard dropped the most. In those moments, the sadness was visible. Not loud, not dramatic, just heavy. Dogs like this do not demand attention. They wait, believing that if they are patient enough, someone might eventually notice. What most people did not realize was that this dog had once been very different. There had been a time when it greeted the world with excitement, when it believed every approaching human was a promise. But disappointment, repeated too many times, reshaped that belief. And now, the dog waited in silence, unsure if hope was something it could afford anymore. One afternoon, a woman entered the shelter without a clear plan. She moved slowly, not rushing toward the loudest or most energetic dogs. She paused often, reading kennel cards, watching behaviors instead of performances. To most visitors, adoption was about instant connection. To her, it was about understanding. As she walked past the familiar corner, something unusual happened. The dog did not move, but its eyes met hers for a brief moment longer than usual. There was no plea in that look, no excitement, just presence. Something about that stillness caught her attention, pulling her back when logic said to keep moving. She knelt in front of the kennel, lowering herself to the dog's level. The dog did not react immediately. It waited, cautious, as if expecting disappointment to arrive any second. When she spoke, her voice was gentle, unhurried. She did not ask for tricks or reactions. She simply sat there, sharing the space. Minutes passed. Other visitors came and went. Yet she remained, observing the way the dog breathed, the way its ears twitched at distant sounds. Slowly, The dog shifted closer, resting its body against the bars. It was a small movement, almost unnoticeable, but it carried a lifetime of meaning. This was the dog testing whether staying present was safe. In that quiet exchange, something changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply. The dog, ignored for so long, was finally being seen without conditions. And the woman, without realizing it yet, was standing at the edge of a decision that would transform both of their lives in ways neither of them could anticipate. The shelter staff watched quietly as the woman asked to spend time with the dog outside the kennel. This request alone was unusual. Most people made their choices within moments. They relied on energy, instant affection, and visible excitement. This dog offered none of that. Still, the woman waited as the leash was clipped on, noticing how the dog's body stiffened slightly, unsure whether this meant freedom or another short-lived test. In the small visiting room, the dog stood still at first, as if unsure where to exist without walls defining its place. It did not explore. It did not pull. It simply waited. The woman sat on the floor, giving the dog space, resisting the urge to fill the silence. Dogs like this need time, not pressure, and time was something she was finally offering. Slowly, the dog lowered itself to the floor a few steps away. Its eyes never left her face. There was curiosity there, but also caution, shaped by too many endings that began with hope. The woman spoke softly, not trying to convince, not trying to impress. Her words were gentle, steady, and consistent, creating a rhythm the dog could lean into. After a long moment, the dog inched closer and lay down near her feet. It did not touch her yet, but the distance had closed. That small shift felt enormous. This was not affection on command. This was trust forming naturally, without expectations. The kind of trust that grows when nothing is being asked in return. For the first time in a very long while, the dog was not performing or waiting to be evaluated. It was simply existing beside someone who had chosen patience over excitement. And in that quiet room, the dog began to remember something it had almost forgotten, that being seen did not always end in being left behind. The following days brought hesitation. The woman did not adopt immediately. She left the shelter with a heavy heart, but with intention. She returned the next day, and the day after that. Each visit reinforced something important to the dog. Consistency. No sudden disappearance. No broken rhythm. Just presence again and again. With every visit, the dog's posture changed slightly. Its movements grew softer. Its eyes brighter. The shelter, once a place of waiting, slowly became a place of familiarity. The dog began to walk toward the gate when she arrived. Not rushing, not desperate, but aware. Recognition replaced resignation. Other dogs continued to be adopted. Kennels emptied and refilled. But something had shifted. The dog no longer watched others leave with the same hollow stillness. Its focus had narrowed. It had learned that sometimes being overlooked by many leads to being chosen by the one who truly sees. The woman noticed the changes too. She saw how the dog responded to calm voices, how it startled less, how it leaned closer without being asked. These were not dramatic transformations, but meaningful ones. They revealed a dog that did not need fixing, only understanding. What neither of them realized yet was that the hardest part was still ahead. Choosing to stay is powerful. Choosing to commit is life-changing. And as the woman stood outside the shelter one final time, paperwork in hand, the dog waited inside, quiet, hopeful, and completely unaware that being ignored had led it exactly where it was meant to be. The day the dog left the shelter felt unreal, as if the world outside was too wide after so long within narrow walls. The sounds were sharper, the air unfamiliar, every movement demanding attention. The dog walked carefully beside the woman, pausing often, absorbing this new reality one step at a time. Freedom, it turned out, was not loud. It was cautious, measured, and full of questions. At her home, the dog chose a quiet corner and settled there, watching everything. It did not explore right away. It observed the creak of the floor, the hum of distant traffic, the rhythm of her movements. This was how the dog learned, by noticing patterns, by confirming that nothing sudden would follow. The woman respected that pace, allowing silence to do its work. The first night was the hardest. The dog slept lightly, waking at the smallest sound, unsure if morning would bring another ending. But morning arrived gently. The woman was still there. The bowl was filled. The voice was the same. For a dog shaped by waiting rooms and closed gates, this consistency felt almost unbelievable. Over the next days, the dog began to claim small pieces of space. A spot near the window, a blanket that carried its scent, a routine that slowly replaced uncertainty. Each repetition eased a layer of tension. Safety, the dog learned, could be predictable, and predictability became comfort. What looked like quiet adjustment from the outside was actually something much deeper. The dog was learning how to belong, not by being impressive or demanding, but by being allowed to exist without fear of being overlooked again. That shift, subtle and profound, marked the true beginning of healing. As weeks passed, the dog's silence transformed into presence. Its eyes followed the woman not with caution, but with calm assurance. Walks became moments of discovery instead of defense. New people were met with careful curiosity rather than retreat. The dog was not becoming someone else. It was becoming itself again. There were still moments when old habits surfaced. Sudden movements, unfamiliar voices, memories that lingered just beneath the surface. But now, those moments passed more quickly. The dog had learned that fear did not always predict the future. That reassurance could arrive and stay. The woman often reflected on how close this story came to ending differently. How easily this dog could have remained unseen, passed over in favor of louder hope. It was a reminder that some of the most meaningful connections are not immediate. They unfold quietly, requiring attention instead of attraction. In time, the dog began offering affection in its own way. A slow lean against her leg, a steady presence at her side, a look that no longer asked for permission to exist. These gestures carried weight because they were chosen, not conditioned. Trust, once fragile, had become solid. And so, the dog that once watched others leave from a silent corner now lived in a world where being overlooked no longer defined it. Not because the past had vanished, but because it had been met with patience, consistency, and understanding. Sometimes, being ignored does not mean being unwanted. Sometimes, it means the right moment, and the right person, has not arrived yet. In the end, this was never just a story about a dog in a shelter. It was a reflection of how easily quiet souls are overlooked in a world that rewards noise and urgency. While others were chosen for how quickly they demanded attention, this dog waited in silence, carrying a depth that only revealed itself to someone willing to slow down and truly see. What this journey teaches us is that being ignored does not mean being unworthy. Sometimes it simply means that the right eyes have not found you yet. Healing did not begin when the kennel door opened, but when patience replaced judgment and presence replaced expectation. In that space, trust grew naturally, proving that love does not need to be loud to be real. The bond that formed was not built on instant excitement, but on consistency, understanding, and time. And that is what made it unbreakable. This dog did not need a change to be chosen. It needed someone willing to listen to what silence was saying. In doing so, both lives were reshaped in ways neither could have planned. Let this story linger with you. Let it challenge how you see those who wait quietly on the sidelines, whether in shelters, in rooms full of people, or in moments that pass too quickly. Sometimes the most meaningful connections are not the ones that call out to us, but the ones that stay still, hoping someone will notice. If this story touched you, stay close. Subscribe to the channel for more stories that reveal the power of empathy and patience. Leave a like if you believe quiet souls deserve to be seen, and share your thoughts in the comments, because your perspective might be the reminder someone needs that being overlooked is not the end of the story.